Hi, this is Lou Pulsfer to talk about things you need to know about doing research for game design. So what is research? It's finding accurate information effectively. And I'll quote Joost van Drunen, who said, "Research lacks poetry, necessarily so. It creates most of its value in utility." Research is not much fun, especially if you get into a lot of detail. I have a PhD in history. I've written a doctoral dissertation in history. I did not particularly enjoy research, though I had to do a lot of it. Research is not just finding, it's recognizing whether you've found something relevant and reliable, whether it's good information. There's lots of bad information in books. There's lots of bad information in people's recollections. There's lots of bad information on the web and the internet. You have to differentiate the good from the bad. Another thing you need to do if you're a game designer is not overdo it. It's a lot harder to actually pin down what happened than you think. It's even harder to figure out why it happened. Many times it's not important for the game. So don't spend too much time hunting for the often elusive answer. Spend time designing and testing the game. In particular, don't use research as an excuse not to work on the actual game. Here's an example of really perhaps overdoing it. Video game studios seem to pride themselves on the detail of the research, even though most of the time it doesn't matter. In one case, two devs from a studio explored a Greek island that was to be the model for the game map, taking photos. Did they need to do this? I don't think so, but that's what they decided to do. Well, the Greeks are suspicious, especially in their islands off the Turkish coast, because they've been enemies with the Turks for hundreds of years. The developers were arrested, and even though it should have been simple, they were guests of the Greek government, that is, in prison, for several months. Did they need that depth of research? Almost certainly not. When you're researching something, use multiple sources. Don't rely on one source if there's a way around it, because often one source will not be entirely accurate. Also, try not to rely on speculation. For example, there are what are supposedly nonfiction books about, quote, King Arthur, unquote, though there is in fact no contemporary evidence that such a person existed. None. Nada. This is an industry of speculation, not fact, what I call wave your hand history. Well, this could be a reference to him, and soon afterward, oh yeah, that's a reference to him, and this could be a reference to him, and none of them are actually clearly references to anybody named King Arthur. If you're happy with speculation, okay. And the best advice I ever got about research is imagine a useful source, then look around to see if that source exists. Now that's easier to do if you live near a great research library, but there are lots of sources in lots of different places that you can access through the internet. Maybe this will help you. There are lots of different kinds of sources. There are secondary and primary sources. There are tertiary sources as well. You can go on and on, but game designers rarely need primary sources. Primary sources are usually something written by or recorded by an active participant or witness to whatever happened. Secondary sources, on the other hand, are written or recorded later or at a distance without full access, without having been there or been a participant or witness. So, all of the work of the writers who lived in Alexander the Great's time and knew the participants did not survive the Dark Ages. None of it survived. So all of our information about Alexander the Great is from secondary sources who relied on the then still extant primary sources centuries later. There are many secondary sources: the web, history books, monographs, which are specialized histories, encyclopedias, historical atlases, magazines, journals, and other things, newspapers. It's not just the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web does not contain all or nearly all the information in the world. Quite the contrary. And a lot of it cannot be accessed unless you have a password. Wikipedia is usually a good source, and I see no reason not to look things up in Wikipedia first, but it's imperfect. Often the Wikipedia entries, though, will lead you to other sites with more information. In any case, search the whole web. Don't just go to Wikipedia unless you're looking for some very simple answer. It has been shown many times that even Google does not find all the possibilities. So, and any particular search you put in will not find all the possibilities that would be useful to you. So try multiple searches and try more than just Google, Bing, Yahoo, others, although I think Yahoo relies on Google's indexing. Bing seems to be the primary competitor. And certainly you get different results between Google and Bing. If you use the web, try to use reliable sources. Many people posting on the web have access to grind, or agendas in the more polite saying. They're not trying to be entirely truthful. There are also historical buff sites that often contain not entirely reliable information, but they have a lot of detail hard to find elsewhere. Some of them are very good, some of them are poor. You could almost call much of the information on the web tertiary sources. Secondary rely on primary and tertiary rely on secondary. History books were once the treasure trove of information, but nowadays books have been displaced by the World Wide Web. Nonetheless, a well-written book provides more than any number of web articles because the book is organized and informed by one mind. It's also a lot of information. If you're not really interested in a topic, is it worth your time to read everything in it? You're trying to design a game, not write a history book. Keep that in mind. Let me repeat it. You're designing a game, not writing a history book. Focus on the game. Monographs are books that are focused strongly on one topic, often somewhat esoteric, like Italian manpower in Roman times. Often these are revised doctoral dissertations. The dissertations themselves are available for a price online. For example, my doctoral dissertation, Aircraft in the Royal Navy 1909 to 1919, is available online, though it was never published as a book. Resort to such things as dissertations and monographs only when you require enormous amounts of detail or you need an answer you just can't get anywhere else. Encyclopedias can be pretty useful. Printed encyclopedias maybe not, because they get out of date quickly and they're suffering from competition from Wikipedia. How much detail do you need? You rarely find a lot of detail in an encyclopedia, but how often do you need a lot of detail? Historical atlases are especially good for designing games at a high strategic and grand strategic level, and I'm one of those strange people who reads historical atlases for pleasure. Most such atlases include lots of explanation, not just maps. They'll have a map on one page and text on the other, or they'll have 2 pages of map and then 2 pages of text. So they give you a summary, and the map will show you things that otherwise you might not notice. Libraries tend to have many historical atlases. I recommend anything by John Harwood or Colin McEvedy. Magazines, journals, newspapers. There are war buff magazines like War Diary, Against the Odds, Strategy and Tactics, Armchair General. They all have material that almost always is secondary or tertiary, and sometimes it's just plain, I'm going to say wrong, but it suffers from history buffism. Somebody reads something and they say, oh, that's the truth, and they don't check whether other things might say something different. And they lack skepticism sometimes. They're very heavily data driven, and while data is nice, hard data is often, reliable hard data is often quite hard to come by. Historical journals, such as the Journal of American History, are much like monographs and are rarely needed by game designers. We have another problem here, that modern readers tend to skim. Sometimes that amounts to functional illiteracy. Whether you are that sort, only you can know. Most historical sources aren't designed for skimming. If it's important to know, it's important to read thoroughly. And I'm going to say again, don't overdo it. If the quality of the game is more important than the quality of the research, you don't need a great deal of research to get started. You may need to jimmy the history to make the game better. Keep in mind, history is merely what happened, not what was inevitable or even most likely. Historians tend to spend a lot more time on why something happened or didn't happen than on what happened. Ordinary folk, perhaps, rely too much on trying to pin down what happened. In a way, for a game, it's not important because the game is not expected to exactly reproduce the history unless you're making a puzzle rather than a game, like the old SPI games often were. So you want your game to be able to show a lot of different possibilities, to not worship what happened to happen. Of course, as with most everything, it depends is an answer to how important is the research. Thanks for listening.